Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel. It is now time to look at some online term results here as we head into NAIC, which is of course this weekend. So I think it's pretty important to look at what decks are doing good in our current online tournament sphere, because obviously the online tournaments can have an impact for what does well at NAIC. I'm sure a lot of people are actually testing for NAIC by playing in these big online tournaments. So it's important to see how the metagame has evolved since the last video we did looking at online tournaments, where we're still seeing Dragapult in its early stages of what people were trying to figure out is the best way to play it. And of course, Raging Bolt was dominating the online tournaments at first, but things have definitely settled down a little bit, I want to say, and the online tournament results here definitely do have an impact on what does well at NAIC. And if y'all are new to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 15K subs, and if you go on to enjoy the video, leave a like. I'll leave a link to play.limitless, the site I am using for today's video. If you ever want to play in any online tourney for yourself, they're free, and there's like one every single day almost, so definitely check it out if you haven't already. So looking at this one, we got the Ditto at Masquerade tournament. All these tournaments, by the way, had over like 120 plus players. Starting things off with the Ditto Masquerade tournament, over half of the top four was Gardevoir EX. Now, Gardevoir, I think a lot of people are saying is the BDIF right now. I don't think it's the BDIF, but I do think it is a top deck in the format. It's definitely getting a lot of play right now. I think a lot of people are just trying to see how good Gardevoir is. Gardevoir is not the same as it used to be from the previous format, where, it no longer has access to the, Shining Arcana Guardy. You're no longer going as, fast and aggressive as you used to with that old build where you have the Reversal Guardy. You now have to rely more on the Drifloon tool combo, but the Monkey Dory and Cresselia do really help the deck a lot. The Monkey Dory especially fixes your Dragapult matchup by quite a bit. I would even argue Gardevoir, if it can set up, has a favored Dragapult matchup. The Cresselia is really good too, especially with Lost Zone seeing some play right now. You got the Flutter Mane in the deck, which is also a very good card to have in the deck. Gardevoir is just a very strong and powerful deck. That definitely is one to be feared for NAIC. You could say that Gardevoir could definitely be one of the top picks for NAIC. Now, the common ace spec in the deck, I think right now, is that Unfair Stamp. I've seen a few Hyper Aromas. We'll see if there's any other Hyper Aromas in today's video, but that Unfair Stamp is very common. Enhanced Hammer and Temple Sinnoh are also pretty common cards that Guardy is playing. And then we got another Gardevoir, of course, at the second place here. Now, this one does not play Cresselia in it. I'm not too sure about that. I think Cresselia is a very important piece in the deck, but this one opts to not play it. Does play the Unfair Stamp still, and does have the Temple of Sinnoh in the deck. Over the Enhanced Hammer. And, of course, there was another Gardevoir in top 4. 3 in top 4, that's pretty crazy. Definitely, you gotta respect Gardevoir heading into NAIC. This build is a little bit more similar to the first place list here. It does have the double Turbo in the deck, though. But still, it's Cresselia and the Monkey Dory and the Drifloon. No Klefki, I guess, which I guess Klefki could be good. I mean, Flutter Mane is good against Lost Box, don't get me wrong. But, like, if they just, like, bundle you, it's pretty bad. So, I don't know, maybe Klefki's worth playing in Guardy. I don't know. Klefki doesn't really seem like a good card otherwise, because, like, outside of maybe, like, it's okay against Raging Bolt. I don't know if the Klefki's worth playing, but, yeah, Gardevoir is just kind of a ridiculously silly deck right now. It does play a little bit differently than past Gardevoir, like I said, but still is most likely going to be a top-tier deck for NAIC. Definitely a deck that if whatever you're bringing NAIC for yourself, if it takes a bad matchup to Gardevoir, I would probably reconsider, your play for NAIC, because Gardevoir is going to be extremely popular. Next up, we have Lost Box here at top 4. Lost Box definitely still feels good. Now, this build actually does not play any Roaring Moon. It's opting to just play the Raikou, Hands, and the Ursaluna. It does have a Lumineon on the deck. It's a little bit more of a turbo-focused build here. We can see 4 Colress, no Boss or Roxanne, the only Gusting card being that one of Prime Catcher. Does still have stuff like the Canceling Cologne in the deck, the double Psychic Energy, so really try and just bank on getting to 7 turn 2 or to 10 turn 2. That's what this build of Lost Box is trying to do. And I guess it kind of offsets not having the Roaring Moon in the deck, where you're just trying to go super fast and just hoping that the turbo-ness of the deck can carry you in the early game, and it allows you to win the game in time. Because just not having Roaring Moon definitely can hurt your Dragapult matchup. It even hurts your Gardevoir matchup a little bit too, because, the EX you can't ever really one-shot as easily, which is interesting. All right, and then in the top 8, we have another Gardevoir. So half of the top 8 was Gardevoir. Gardevoir is just a very strong deck right now. This build here does play a Tatsugiri in the deck, which is something we haven't really been seeing a Gardevoir play. But the Tatsugiri is definitely interesting because it can help out your consistency. It also gives you, an easier way to find that turn 1 Arven, which can turn into, the turn 1 TM evolution, which is really, really strong. This one also playing Unfair Stamp as the A-Spec. That's one thing I'm interested in, is what A-Spec is Gardevoir playing. It's actually a Dialga in top 8 here. Really nothing too different than most Dialga lists from before. Just playing Ursaluna, though, which isn't a terrible option in the deck. Nice little, late game attacker. You could even use it in the early game, realistically. But yeah, Dialga's not in a bad spot right now. I don't think it has a great Guardy matchup, and that's like the one thing that holds me back of wanting to play Dialga, because I honestly think Dialga isn't really a bad deck for this tournament. It actually has an okay matchup spread. I think it's decent into most of the big decks. Like, I would imagine its Dragapult matchup's fine. I think your Lugia matchup is okay too, but I would argue your Guardy matchup is where things get a little tricky, just because you are playing, Pokemon that can easily get 1 AKO by Drifloon, right? And Mimikyu can be annoying too. I don't know. Dialga doesn't seem like it's in a bad spot right now at all, though, and I definitely think that it is one deck we might see a few players bring to NAIC, but we do see the Dialga deck here in top 8. We see a Lost Tina in top 8. We see another Tina in top 8. Another, just kind of underdog-style deck right now. There's not a lot of Tina going around, but Tina definitely isn't a bad deck right now. It does have the ability to abuse cards like Calamitous Wasteland, as we see in this build, which is very interesting. Does have the Unfair Stamp as the A-Spec, which is a very interesting A-Spec to see also within the Giratina. It's a very interesting list, actually. Wasteland and Unfair Stamp definitely do seem like a very interesting combo. But yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, Giratina's not in a bad spot. I mean, your Guardy matchup's probably not terrible. I mean, I guess I do have, Fluttermane, which is kind of annoying. But, I don't know, I feel like your Guardy matchup's okay for Tina. Tina's probably, okay right now. You got to play the Temple of Sinnoh, of course, because you need to be able to have an out to Lugia here. And then, of course, we see an Iron Thorns deck here in the top 8. Also, Iron Thorns with the Iron Hand. So kind of like a split future build of the two together. Iron Thorns can be very annoying to play against when you're relying on a deck with rule boxes, mainly Raging Bolt, which Iron Hands usually struggles against Raging Bolt, but when you do have the Iron Thorns in the deck, right, your Raging Bolt matchup gets fixed a little bit. And it's also good into Lugia, which is already a good matchup, but it makes it even better when you can also use Iron Thorns. So definitely an interesting way to play future hands. We'll have to see if the Iron Thorns become staple, because I know future hands we'll probably see some play in NAIC, and we'll have to see if the people are playing the Thorns in it. This next tournament here, we got another tourney where Lost Box actually took down the tournament. And it's another build here that does not play Roaring Moon. Once again, playing into the more turbo aspect of the deck. But this one does have a little bit more supporter in the deck. It does play 2 Boss and 2 Roxanne and 4 Colress. So a little bit heavier count of supporter cards. But does play 2 Pokestop. Does have that canceling Cologne in the deck also. And the 2 Vacuums. So yeah, really trying to just get to the turn 2 10 or turn 2 7 in the Lost Zone a lot more quickly. That's basically what this build's opting to do, as it is cutting the Roaring Moon stuff out of the deck. And it did win the tournament. It actually did end up taking down a Gardevoir deck here in the finals. We see another Guardy list here with the Unfair Stamp as the A-Spec. Does have the Fluttermane there too. Does have the crest and everything. Playing Collapse Stadium actually as the stadium of choice in that build. We got another Guardy here in the top 4 here in 3rd place. This one does have Temple of Sinnoh and Unfair Stamp also in the deck, and is still playing the Monkey Dory and the Cresselia in the deck too. So yeah, Gardevoir just doing really good in the online trades right now. That's kind of the big takeaway. There is a couple of Raging Bolt here in the top 8. Can't forget about good old Raging Bolt. And this Raging Bolt build, pretty simple. I mean, most of the Raging Bolt 60s I think have been kind of figured out right now. I think a lot of people have kind of opted for, an optimal way to play the deck. There isn't really anything too groundbreaking, I don't think, anymore coming out of Raging Bolt. This one does play the Cornerstone Ogerpon and has the Sandy Shocks. I do think the Sandy Shocks is really good in the deck because it does help a little bit against Gardevoir. Gardevoir is a challenging matchup in my opinion. It's not, the easiest matchup on the planet for Raging Bolt to deal with. So having the Sandy Shocks definitely can help that matchup a little bit, where you're forcing a 1-prizer into the active spot as opposed to just going Raging Bolt every single turn, which doesn't really work or win you the game at all. Another Raging Bolt here in top 4. This one does have some interesting stuff to play in the Sandy Shocks split. It's got the EX and has the 1-prizer and also plays the Iron Bundle in the deck. And the Iron Bundle is definitely interesting to see within Raging Bolt. I guess it could be good if your opponent, tries to put a 1-prizer in the active, especially in the mirror match, for example. The mirror match is kind of weird. You have to put Greninja in the active and hope that you don't lose the first 2 prize cards, because that matchup is basically just go whoever takes the first 2 prizes usually wins the game, and I guess that's kind of where the Iron Bundle can really come up. So that's interesting to see. We got another Future Hands Thorns deck here in the top 8. Iron Thorns seeing some more play within the Future deck. Definitely not bad. Did manage to squeak its way into top 8. which is pretty good. And I would imagine the deck is okay in a Gardevoir. I know they do have like Screamtail, Countercatcher shenanigans against you, but it's fine. There's a Charizard in top 8 here, and this one does have some very interesting technology, actually. It's playing 2 different V Pokemon. It's got the Entei V, and it's playing a Reshiram V. I have not seen this card in a while. It does have that White Blaze attack that is 200 damage. Then you got Sparkling Wing. I don't know what the point of the Reshiram is over the Entei. I guess it's just there to do 200 damage. I guess it's there to deal with Cornerstone Ogerpon. You do play the maximum belt in the deck. It's interesting. This is a very interesting Charizard 60. And it did get top 8, so did something right. The Reshiram's definitely very interesting. And then, of course, we got a Dragapult in the top 8 here. It's a bit more of a simplistic build, just playing the Xatu in the deck. The A-Spec is interesting, though. It is playing Scoop Up Cyclone as the A-Spec as a way to heal your Dragapult, which actually can be pretty annoying to deal with when you're trying to two-shot Dragapult. Because if Dragapult is surviving hits and tanking them, right, if they're just sitting there dealing a ton of damage on your board, if they can ever Scoop Up Cyclone the Dragapult, I would imagine that would get pretty annoying. But yeah, this build also playing Radiant Charizard in the deck, also as the Radiant over the Alakazam. We got the Redacted number 2 tournament here, and the winning deck was actually a Lost Zone Charizard EX, or Charizard, Radiant Charizard deck, sorry, and this has some interesting stuff going on in the deck. It is playing the Radiant Charizard Cram Sableye package, the normal stuff. One thing that we haven't seen the Sablezard decks play is that Monkey Dory, which is a really interesting inclusion, but it does help a little bit against Dragapult. Dragapult is one of Lost Box harder matchups, in my opinion. When you have the Monkey Dory in the deck, it makes it a little bit more tolerable because you can heal some of the damage Dragapult does, and you can also dish out a little bit more damage onto their board, too. Monkey Dory does synergize really, really nicely with Sableye, which is kind of the big deal with this build. There's some other funky stuff in the deck. There is a Hassle in the deck here, which is an interesting idea. When something does get knocked out, you can look at the top 8 cards of your deck and put 3 of them in your hand. So that could be a really cool way to like get a bunch of cards you need at once to like piece together a big combo. It's a very interesting card to see within the Lost Zone deck. It's like not the same as Raihan, but I guess like in a way it's doing a little something similar, I guess. I mean, I guess Mellow would probably be even better than that Raihan at that point. It does play Crisis Punch and a Magma Basin in the deck too. But yeah, it's a very interesting list. I like the idea of Sablezard. I think Sablezard is like an okay deck right now. It has a good Raging Bolt matchup because naturally you just have Radiant Charizard as one of your main attackers. I would imagine your Guardy matchup is not terrible. As long as you have the Iron Bundle, I think the Guardy matchup's fine. You do have double Sableye, double Cram, which Gardevoir can sometimes struggle to deal with a little bit. Then second place, we had an Arcanine Armorouge deck here. Another deck that we haven't really seen too much of this format. This one does have some interesting attackers in it. It looks more like a toolbox Arcanine Armorouge deck as opposed to like the fire builds we've been seeing from the last format. It does still have the Delphox and the Armorouges in the deck. No Armorouge EX, but it does play some other attackers alongside the Rainbow Energy style cards like the Luminous Energy and the Legacy Energy. It does play Monkey Dory in the deck, and it also has Cornerstone Ogerpon. It does also have Iron Hands in the deck, which you can abuse. You can put Fire Energy on it with Armorouge, then you can put like a Legacy Energy on it, and then it also plays the Hearth Flame Mask Ogerpon, which is interesting. It does have that Wrathful Hearth attack, and it does 20 damage for each damage counter on it. And then it also has Dynamic Blaze, which for 3 Fire Energy can do 140 damage if your opponent's active Pokemon is an evolution Pokemon. This attack will do 140 more damage. So it can do 280 damage. You don't have to discard all the energy after using it, but it's a nice way to knock out V-Star Pokemon, which is nice. And it also can one-hit KO a Gardevoir EX, I guess. If they have enough damage counters on them after they've, accelerated themselves, maybe you can knock them out with the Ogerpon, which is kind of cool. So yeah, an interesting 60 here. It does play Enhanced Hammer, has Legacy Energy, which can be kind of annoying to deal with over like Maximum Belt within the deck. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I don't know if the matchup against Raging Bolts can be very good. That's like my one issue with Arc right now. But hey, if Raging Bolt is not performing as well in the online tourneys, maybe it is worth playing the Arc. And then we got a Gholdengo in top 4. That makes me pretty happy. It's the Gholdengo Palkia deck. Pretty simple build. I like the idea of playing Spiritomb in Gholdengo right now. I think Spiritomb actually does have some value within Gholdengo because you're able to slow down Ronom V, which is a pretty crucial card right now in the format. So I like the idea of that. It does play Enhanced Hammer, another card I would probably play in Gholdengo to deal with Legacy Energy. The Palkia V-Star is not bad. It does give you a little bit more aggressive plays in the early game. Has the Prime Catcher Cologne combo. Yeah, seeing Gholdengo makes me happy in top 4. There's a Lugia in top 4 here. We see the Lugia build here with the Cinccino, the hands here. Sluna does also play one copy of Mew EX. Not terrible. Mew is not a bad card to play within Lugia. It's a nice splashable card, and you can get some value out of it. Not playing the Ogerpon in the deck, I think, is kind of the big deal here. Also, no Jamming Tower in this build of Lugia, but Lugia is just such a strong deck. Sometimes you don't need to go all in on that. We got another Guardian top 8 here, playing the Unfair Stamp within the deck. It's the A-Spec. Then we got a Snorlax Pidgeot deck here in top 8. More or less just like a Snorlax control deck with the 2/2 Pidgeot in the deck for the support engine. Build here does have the Crushing Hammers in the deck. Try to remove energy so you can, try to take away any attackers your opponent is trying to use against you to deal with your Mimikyu or your Snorlax. Does have the League Headquarters, 3 Temple Sinnohs, playing 5 Stadium cards, to be honest. It's got the Beach Court in the deck, too. It's got the one of Flute. Very interesting 60 here for Snorlax, but definitely do not sleep on Snorlax right now. It is definitely a very strong deck. And then we got another Raging Bolt here in the top 8. This one's got some interesting text in it. It's playing the Sandy Shocks and the Ogerpon split, but also plays a Thornton in the deck, which is very interesting. You can actually use Thornton to turn back into another attacker of your choice, or you can use it to get rid of your Mew or Squawkabilly. Is it better than Penny? I'm not too sure, but it is definitely an interesting inclusion in the deck. That can probably catch a lot of people off guard, too, in a closed deckless environment. And then in the top 8 here to round things out, we had a Lost Tina deck, and it's actually a more simple Lost Tina build, playing Iron Leaves, kind of like an old Temporal Forces meta Lost Tina build, not playing the Blood Moon Ursaluna in the deck, just opting for the Iron Leaves, whatnot, just, simple stuff. Did get top 8 in the tournament, so definitely respects there. Next up, we got the Battle Park tournament here, and the winning deck was Gardevoir. Gardevoir, like I said, it right now is currently dominating the online tournaments, and this one does have the Unfair Stamp A-Spec and plays Cresselia, and Monkey Dory did take down in this tournament. But in second place, there was a Charizard deck here, so not too far behind was Charizard. Charizard definitely is not terrible into Gardevoir, I don't think. The matchup is not as bad. This Charizard build actually plays the Delphox V in the deck, which is interesting, trying to get those cheeky snipes. And I guess that would help against Lugia, because you can take out the Cinchinos. Your opponent's got 2 Cinchinos in play. You can just Delphox both of them, I guess. Does play Kieran, the A-Spec of choice being the Maximum Belt. Also playing the one of Mist Energy, obviously helps a little bit more against the Dragapult matchup. And then third place there was another Gardevoir. Look at that big shocker there. This Gardevoir deck does play the Klefki, Cresselia, Monkey Dory, so a little bit more teched out for like Lost Zone decks. And there was a, skipped over that. There's another Gholdengo here in this tournament. This one did get top 4. This Gholdengo deck does play the one of Reverum for a little bit of extra draw in the deck. It does allow you to discard energy from your hand and then draw until you have 6. So really interesting option within this Gholdengo deck here. I don't know. I'm happy to see Gholdengo do well. Hopefully we see a couple Gholdengos get day 2 at NAIC. This top 8 also had another future Iron Thorns, Iron Hands deck. Looks like this is the optimal way to play Iron Thorns right now over the quad build. The quad build was fun. Saw a little bit of action at the beginning of the format, but we're seeing now that Iron Thorns is best suited with Iron Hands and Iron Crown. Was a very interesting control deck here in the top 8. This one's very interesting. It's a Greninja EX control deck. Now, honestly, I get the idea. Greninja does have an attack that lets you get any card out of your deck every single turn. So combine that with Pidgeot, you do have yourself a pretty interesting package where you're able to get a lot of cards every single turn. And, a control deck being able to get any card they want every turn is very deadly. And this control build did get top 8. It's a very interesting list. I definitely want to maybe try it out one day. I am working on another Greninja video, but I definitely want to try out this idea for a Greninja deck. This is a very cool way to play Greninja. And does have the Luxrays in the deck. It's got the Luxray here with Reversal Energy, probably to KO Pidgeots and Lugia. And then you have the Fang Snipe Luxray, the Regieleki in the deck, the Sob, Wellspring Ogerpon. Yeah, cool stuff. Yeah, right. Greninja control, definitely a very, very interesting concept for sure. And then we got another Raging Bolt Ogerpon here in the top 8. Just another build, just straightforward stuff. Does play the Penny in the deck and does have the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. No Sandy Shocks within this build here. And then in the top 8 in this tournament, we see another Lugia deck here. This one does opt to play the Wellspring Ogerpon, so is trying to get those cheeky snipe plays when you can. Also plays the Jamming Tower and triple Carmine and double Research. So a lot of draw in the deck to help get those Archeops out really quickly. And yeah, the Ogerpon definitely is something we'll have to see if Lugia continues to play it or not. Like, honestly, if I'm going to NAIC against Lugia, I'm saying that they ain't playing the Ogerpon. I'm not benching Manaphy. Next up, we got the Battle Park tournament here, and the winning deck was Dragapult, so we are seeing a little bit more action for Dragapult here. Now, this build of Dragapult is the Pidgeot build, and I think a lot of people have kind of decided that Pidgeot is the best way to play Dragapult right now. Does have the Neo Upper Energy, which you do have to play if you're playing Pidgeot Dragapult, because, you're trying to get that attack off turn 2, and in order to do that, Neo Upper Energy does go a long way to help you pull off that turn 2 Dragapult, and it did take down the entire tournament. In fact, it took down a Dragapult deck in the finals, but it was the Lost Zone Dragapult deck. Now, I've been hearing a lot of talk about this deck being really good right now. I'm not sold on Lost Zone Dragapult. I don't think the deck is that good. I would honestly, at that point, just play Sablezard. Now, the one interesting thing about this list is, one, there's no Sableye in the deck, and two, it's playing Hyper Aroma as the ace spec, which is interesting because you can use Hyper Aroma to grab a bunch of your Dracloaks. And set up Dracloak isn't bad. I mean, Lost Zone definitely can take advantage of Dracloak. It does give you a little bit of extra draw, makes you a little less like Iono proof or whatnot, which is kind of cool. So yeah, Lost Pult is definitely very interesting in archetype for sure. I'm not sold on it yet. This build not playing Sableye is also very interesting too. The top four, once again, though, we did have a Gardevoir. Did end up, it looks like, losing to one of those Dragapult decks. And then we got another Raging Bolt in top four here. This one does play the Sandy Shocks. No, I lied. There is a Cornerstone Ogerpon. Actually, the one big difference, there's no Squawkabilly in this build. Does play a Temple of Sinnoh, though, and a Pokestop. And does play a little bit heavier supporters with 2 Iono and 2 copies of Boss. They got a Lost Zone here in top 8. Very interesting Lost Zone deck. It's actually a Lost Zone deck with Cornerstone Ogerpon and Ursaluna. No Raikou, no Hands, no Moon. Just playing the Ursaluna and the Ogerpon. Trying to be a little bit more turbo, I guess. Trying to rely more on Sableye as one of your main attackers. Does play 3 Psychic Energy. Does play a TM Devo. Actually, also opting to play Secret Box in the deck here as the ace spec of choice, which is also very interesting. Yeah, it's cool. Search deck for an item, tool, supporter, stadium. I guess that does allow you to set up pretty easily. You can get your Colress with it. You can get, a rescue board. You can get Artisan. I guess that kind of makes sense in the deck. Is it better than Prime Catcher, though? I'm not sure. The other downside is you have to discard 3 cards from your hand, which sometimes can be a little annoying for Lost Zone decks. It's a cool 60, though, for sure. Definitely a cool 60. I like to see the creativity Lost Zone can have. And then the round out the rest of the top 8 is just a bunch of Lugia. We got a Lugia here playing 2 Lugia Vs. Oh, interesting. A little bit more greedier, but does play a weirdier V in the deck and 2 Squawkabillies. So trying to, I guess, rely a little bit more heavily on Squawk and Seize, getting you the Archeops as opposed to Carmine, but also putting the weirdier back in the deck. Actually, there's no Cinccino either. I just realized this build has no Cinccino. Okay, this is a very different Lugia build. I guess it's trying to rely a little bit more heavily on just going 2-2-2 the entire game. Interesting. It did get top 8. Now, Lugia build here. This one, a little bit more straightforward. Does have the Cincinos. Not playing Carmine in the deck, however, but does have the double jamming tower in the deck. And then we got another Lugia to round out the top 8 here. This one also plays Cinccino and does play the triple Carmine in the deck, but no Ogerpon. So those 3 Lugia builds did not play the Ogerpon. Look at that. And then finally, we have the Regional Championships, the third here, the Tournament of Doom Regional Championships. And this one did have a lot of players. It was the biggest online tournament in the past few weeks. This one was won by Lost Box. Lost Box took it down, and it was a little bit more traditional Lost Zone build, playing the Roy Moon, the Hand, Sarah Luna. No Raikou in the deck, though. Does play the Tomb, does have the Bundle in the deck, does have Mana Fee. It's a little bit more teched out. Also only playing 2 Buddy Buddy Poffin, playing just 1 Stadium, being that Artisan. The one difference is it does have the Jet Energy in the deck for that little bit of extra switch, I guess. Does play Palpad, 1 Lost Vacuum, a little bit more greedier with the 1 Vacuum, but it did win the tournament, and it did take down a big tournament, right? So, could be good. We got a Lost Pult that did make it to the finals here. This one does have the Radiant Charizard, does have the Dragapult, the Sableye in the deck this time around, the double Temple Sinnoh. Not playing Hyper Aroma, does play Prime Catcher as the ace spec, so that's cool to see. It's interesting that it lost in the finals. I would actually imagine that Lost Pult is favored against more traditional Lost Box, right? Because you have the Dragapult, and you rely a little bit more heavily on your spread stuff, which is a little bit harder for them to deal with. Well, there was a quad Iron Thorns in the top 8 here, so we were saying earlier that the Iron Thorns Future Box deck was like the optimal way to play Iron Thorns, but no, there was a Iron Thorns, quad deck that made it to the top 4 here. Did have the Crushing Hammers for Giovanni's Charisma, a lot of energy removal. In fact, all the supporters in the deck were 4 Iono, 4 Judge, 4 Arvin, 4 Boss, 4 Giovanni. 4 Hammers. Also playing the Handheld Fan as tool card, and playing the Legacy Energy Ace spec to make your opponent go through 4 Iron Thorns. There was a Guardy here that made it all the way into top 4 also, because Gardevoir is extremely good right now, and it's just how it goes. Did make it all the way to the top 4 there. Then we got a Lugia here in the top 8 also, playing the Wellspring Ogerpon, and 1 copy of Carmine. That's like another discussion point right now that a lot of Lugia players are having, is how many Carmine is Lugia playing. This build that got top 8 just plays the single copy of Carmine. Another Lost Box here in top 8. This one, once again, not playing the Moon in the deck, playing the Hands Moon Raikou stuff. Does play the 2 Psychic, though. So it's really trying to, like I said, get to 10 a little bit more. It does play the double Rock Sand, so it does have a little bit of extra draw. I like the idea of double Rock Sand. It's something that I've thought of personally in playing within Lost Box too, over playing the Pal Pad, because like Rock Sand is just a really valuable card. Sometimes you do have to Lost Zone the Rock Sand, which can get a little awkward, so I don't know, maybe playing 2 is the way to go. Now, Lugia in top 8 here. This one does play the Ogre Pawn. Also playing Radiant Charizard. A little bit more of a slim count of Cinccino, playing a 2-2 Cinccino line as opposed to the 3-3 line. Does have the double Carmine in the deck too. And triple Iono and 2 Jamming Tower. So a little bit more of a disruptive Lugia deck here for sure. Yeah, a little bit more disruptive. And then finally, round of this top 8, of course, we got yet another Gardevoir deck here, playing 2 copies of Monkey Dory. Also playing Clef on the deck's interesting for the draw, and then does have the Unfair stamp as the ace spec of choice within this Guardy list. But there you go, folks. That is it for the recent online tournaments, all the big online tournaments of the past week. Things to take away: Gardevoir is doing really good in them. Lugia also doing really good. Dragapult still kind of finding its footing, it looks like. Lost Zone's doing decent too. Iron Thorn seeing some play within the Future Hands deck. Raging Bolt not being as dominant as it used to be. Raging Bolt's kind of cooling off a little bit. Still doing okay, I guess, with all the Gardevoir in these online tournaments, so it is a little bit more tougher for Raging Bolt to succeed. Saw a couple interesting decks in the top 8, like the Dialga deck, Sablezard. We're seeing a couple Charizards squeak their way into top 8 too. NAIC Armorouge, a couple Gholdengos too. So definitely interesting results to look at. Not as much control this time around, though, I will say. There wasn't that many control decks here in any of these top 8s, which is definitely interesting to note that there wasn't as much control. Because I do think that control/stall is something to fear going into NAIC, regardless of whether or not it's doing well in these online tournaments right now. But there you go, folks. That is going to be it for me for today's video with these online tournaments. Again, last online tournament look at video here before NAIC. And we'll have to see what decks do well at NAIC from these online tournaments, and these results definitely will have an impact on those results for sure. But hope you all enjoyed today's video here on the second channel. If you did, leave a like, subscribe down below if you haven't already. We're on the road to 15K subs. Let me know what you think of these results down below. Once again, I'll leave a link to Limitless here in the description if you want to go play in any online tournaments for yourself. And I'll see you on another video here on the second channel. Bye-bye.